So I did want to point out before we go too much farther, and we'll say this at the end again, if you have not signed up for our email list, please do so.
Yes.
There's a sign up button on our Facebook page, and if you know us, we're not going to be sending you thousands of emails. You will not become overwhelmed. But
it will be ones of emails.
Ones of emails?
Possibly 10.
Or 10. Tens of emails?
I don't know.
Are
tens.
you writing these emails?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so it's probably ones of emails.
Ones of emails.
But we have courses that we're going to be rolling out fairly soon, I think. I think we've got a steady stream coming. And so we really want people to be able to know that that's coming and get excited about it, because we're pretty excited about it.
Very excited.
So please do sign up, and that way we can keep you posted about stuff that's going on in other places besides the Facebook page. So there we are. So we wanted to talk, or I wanted to talk, and he's going along with me because he's a really nice guy. I wanted to talk about this problem of evil. And it's been interesting for me as the discussion about gun control or freedom or mental illness, however you're phrasing this, has been going over the last 2 mass shootings. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really easy to get focused on, do we have tougher laws, do we not have tougher laws, rather than, as Christians or as people of faith, rather than so what do we do with evil? I mean, what do we do with the fact that God allows us to have free will, right? And humans having free will probably wasn't a great idea to begin with. But so how do we do it, and how do we use our own free will?
Right, because evil's going to happen whether somebody has a gun in their hand or not.
Right. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have better laws.
Doesn't mean we shouldn't have better laws. Absolutely. But evil happens anyway.
Right.
So we have to live in the midst of evil, regardless of what our government chooses to do or not do about it.
Right. I don't think we've actually talked about how do you imagine. Is evil personified for you?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, I think I perceive evil as a force. But I think that it's a force that loses its power when we fail to feed into it. So, in other words, if there's a Satan or a devil, then he loses his power when we choose not to listen or pay attention or do what he says.
Got it.
If there's not a Satan or a devil and it's just human nature, some people think that humans are inherently evil. I don't. But if that's what it would be, then I would say it's still, when we choose not to abide it, then it ceases to be. So really, good and evil is a choice that we make. It's a choice that we continue to make. We can live there and make those kinds of choices, or we can choose not to.
Yeah, I would aim somewhat that trajectory as well. I was thinking, I posted something on my Facebook page, my personal Facebook page, about that I really wanted people to stop saying it's all a mental health problem or it's all of this, that, or other problem, because it's not all a X problem, right?
Right.
Mass shootings are not just one problem.
No, of course not.
They're multiple problems.
Absolutely.
And if we're purely a mental health problem, then other places with difficult mental health problems would have more mass shootings.
Right, and I don't think it's fair to demonize mental illness that way either.
Right.
Because it would be really easy to just blame mental illness for what happened in Texas. I mean, there's more to it than that.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot more to it than that. So I posted this, and then there was this long stream of conversation which I participated in for a little bit, and then just kind of quietly stepped away from it and let people talk. And it started out pretty rash, but then it started getting, I think, into a conversation that might have some fruit. Might bear some fruit. But I was thinking about Jesus's love your enemies thing. And that both suggests a kind of conduct but it also suggests that we have enemies. And I don't like to think of Christians as having enemies.
Yeah.
Or people of faith as having enemies.
Yeah.
I don't like to think of myself as having enemies.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no doubt I have some enemies. But it seems like if we're living our lives well, we don't have any enemies.
Right.
Except that we do.
Except that we do, right. And I can't name an enemy. I mean, there are people in my history, or in my history, that I would say we chose to part ways. But I hope that I haven't left any of those people feeling as though they are my enemy.
Right.
But I know that there are people who are our enemies simply because they stand on the other side.
That's it. And that's
right.
where I went with this.
Of something.
That's
right.
where I went with this today. Was that those who come out not so much on this side or that of any particular issue, but who seem to have deep values that absolutely contradict mine.
Right.
We are cast into an enemy position, even if we are good to each other.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Well, it does, and that's something I've been grappling with lately because I have friends and family members, who politically are on the other side of the spectrum from me. And right now, what I grapple with is, the urge to feel somehow superior or wronged or whatever. And then I have to remember these people who I know, and many of whom I've known my entire life, pretty close to it, and loving them and accepting them and looking for the common ground that we share.
Yes.
Has become something that I find is important, even if it's just for me.
Mm-hmm. It's
important because first of all, I don't want to feel superior to anybody. I don't have all the answers. I don't have it all right. I do think that there are biblical answers to certain problems. There are answers to certain problems that we come to when we live a kingdom life and when we seek Christ that way. Mm-hmm. And I have issue with other people who profess to be Christ followers that don't come to the same conclusion. And so that's the thing that I wrestle with a little bit. And so, but it's really hard for me to call those people enemies.
Right. And I think because the difference is in who we are, mm-hmm. It is easier for me to recognize them as enemies, mm-hmm. in that philosophical sense.
Sure.
But I'm so convinced that that call to love your enemies is about an intentional thought process and behavior.
Sure.
Rather than think your enemies are right, sympathize, any of that. And that tension, mm-hmm. between thinking somebody is dead wrong about a position and still, loving them and wanting their good and acknowledging that I don't know what their good is necessarily.
Right.
But wanting their good and wanting them to flourish.
Right.
And doing what I can to help them flourish.
Right.
That's what love is.
That is what love is.
Right. And yeah.
It makes me wonder who did Jesus perceive his enemies to be?
Okay.
Were they the Pharisees and the Sadducees? Therefore the church? Were they something else? I mean, I don't know. I don't know who Jesus perceived his enemies to be.
Well, he certainly has sharp words for people within his own tradition. Like, yeah. His sharp words are all about people he would have people who would have been in the same groups he was.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
So his sharp words were for the leaders of the Hebrew/Jewish people at the time. And regardless of his background, although we've got good biblical reason to think this, that, or the other about his background, those are the people he had his sharp words for. Right? So his sharp words weren't for the Assyrians. They weren't for the Canaanites.
Right.
They weren't for them. They were for us,
Right.
who are not behaving the way us should.
So what does that mean for us then? Does that mean that we should have a higher standard for those who believe the way we do or profess to? Does that mean that we should, in other words, those who are outside of our tradition, those who are outside of faith, period, I'm not saying they get a pass, but are the standards different in terms of what our expectations are for those folks? You know what I mean? So, like, are my enemies those within the church, those who profess to be something, and I see the error, okay, we'll say the error of what's going on in terms of who they support, what they believe, whatever, as opposed to someone who's perhaps from a different faith or an atheist or a non-practicing anything or doesn't profess faith in any way.
My sense is that we're called to think of everybody as an us,
Okay.
and know thems.
Okay.
Okay, that's part of being on this path.
Okay.
Is that really 7 million us?
Yeah.
And we got to figure out what to do about 7 million us.
Right. Right.
So there's that piece, and that's a training piece and a choice piece, right?
Sure.
Then there's the, what do I do with people whose, whatever it is, culture, language, anything. It doesn't matter what it is, but are so completely different from mine that I know I don't truly understand their experience,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that could happen just in this country.
Oh, of
right?
course, right.
It seems to me that part of being a person of faith is doing our level best to try and see through that lens, through that perspective, educate ourselves, don't wait for other people to educate us, educate ourselves and to see through the lens of that person.
Yeah.
And when we have to build relationships of trust with people and decency before we can start to say, oh, and by the way,
oh, absolutely,
this sucks.
Right.
And then with people within our own group, whatever that is, I mean, we've talked about this piece a lot,
Mm-hmm.
right? People within our own group, we have to be able to say, look, we see ourselves as being in the same group. We have to be able to talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
Or I need to be able to say, look, if you're claiming that you're a Christian and you're smacking around your kids, I'm going to step in. I'm going to step into this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And I might step in for other people as well, but because you're smacking around your kids.
Right.
But I think there's a particular. We have a particular. We have a particular responsibility to both get to know the people of our tribe.
Yes.
And be open to their critique of us.
Yes.
And be willing to point out when there's something that is life-taking that's going on. Right.
Right. Okay.
Right. Like if you wear jeans to church and our church doesn't wear jeans, that is not something I need to talk to you about. Mm-hmm. That is not an issue because it is not taking life. It's not life-destroying. If you're smacking around your kids, there's life-destroying happening.
Sure.
So at
that point.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. Let's see what everybody's saying.
Yeah, there's a question. Do you think that evil can live in a person? In people.
Well, Claudette, I don't know when you came in on this, but we were talking about how Ben was talking about how he experiences evil as more of a, this is not your language, but more of an amorphous force rather than a personal entity. Do you think evil can, well, see, I'm getting too philosophical. Can you answer that question for her from your perspective?
From my perspective, I think the proclivity for evil lives in all of us.
Okay.
I don't think any of us is unsusceptible.
Right.
And I think that we choose good and we choose evil.
Okay.
Do I think that people act in the preponderance of evil or allow evil to govern their decisions? Sometimes, yes.
Okay.
And in that case, and sometimes it's someone who maybe doesn't have all their bearings.
Right.
Sometimes they fully have their bearings.
Right.
Sometimes people act in evil toward other people because they simply want to. Right. They choose to.
Right.
But the proclivity for good lives in those folks as well.
Right.
So I think all of us have the ability to choose good or choose evil.
Right.
There are probably supernatural anomalies to that statement that I wouldn't know how to speak to. Angels and demon stuff, but I feel that in everyday life with most people all the time, we choose good or we choose evil. We choose right or we choose wrong. We choose kind or we choose unkind.
Right.
And I think that is where the rubber meets the road for most followers of Christ or most people who are devoted to their faith, whatever that is am I going to be kind to people today? Am I going to choose to put good in the world today? Am I going to choose to love? Am I going to choose to give rather than take?
Right.
And I think that's the choice that most of us are faced with. Sometimes we're confronted with evil,
right,
and we have to face that and answer that in some way. But I still believe that we are called to answer evil with good.
Right.
We're still called to answer hate with love.
Right. Right. And that's particularly as Christ followers, is what you're saying.
Particularly as Christ followers.
Okay. Because that's what we're told to do.
Right.
I think that I don't believe that evil is an entity that lives on its own, that can come into a person and take up residence. From the way at least what I've observed, evil is not aliens, right?
Right?
It's not that. It feels like that because when somebody's really intent on what they want, and what they want is destroying other people, it feels as though it's coming out of some weird spirit that we don't understand. And again, I'm with you that there may be more to heaven and earth than is drummed up in our philosophy, but most of the time, I think what actually happens is that, you know, if we've got these choices in front of us, door number one, door number two, whichever one we choose, we're more likely to choose that one again.
Yes.
And the more we keep choosing that one, the more we keep, right? So, and that's that set your mind on things above, or set your mind on whatever.
Yes.
So the challenge is that whatever choices we make, whether we're choosing evil or good, whatever choices we make starts to feel to us like that is our good. That is the thing that's best for us.
Yes.
And we talk ourselves into that, right?
Sure.
So if you think about somebody who is hurting themselves, it starts to feel like that is the correct thing to do because you've done it a number of times, right? We habituate whatever it is.
Right. Right.
So that if you think about somebody who is really evil, it's easy to pick on somebody who's no longer with us. So let's say Genghis Khan. Okay, if we think of Genghis Khan as somebody who's, you know, essentially evil, what would happen is that he would make a choice, which would then lead him to another choice, which would lead him to another choice in that kind of evil trajectory. But he would see that as his good. So from his perspective, he's choosing the right thing.
Right.
But it's destructive to everybody else.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Which I think that's why, as either followers of the Hebrew tradition or of the Christian tradition, King David is such an interesting example because this is a man who could have, I mean, clearly from fairly objective standards, you could say he chose evil at points along the way.
Absolutely.
And yet there was redemption for David because he recognized what he did, repented for what he did, and chose a different path. So I think that's a prototype for the way that we can choose to. We don't have to live in that cycle, even though it's very natural to do that. We don't have to do that.
No, that absolutely makes sense. That makes sense to me. Did that get anywhere? Did that help at all, Claudette? I don't know. Let us know if you have more questions about that. Any other thoughts on people's minds about living with evil, or about the fact that there will always be people who do things that are destructive to themselves or to other people. Any thoughts about that, or how do you deal with it when you come up against something that is particular? You know, we have a number of people in our church who work in like child protective services or who work in social work, and you know, those of us who are either trained in that kind of work or who love a lot can recognize the factors that go into a horrible situation and wish the factors weren't there, and pray for the healing of the factors. But often there's something that has to be taken care of because somebody else is in danger, that's the kind of thing where we're dealing with an evil, which is the destruction of a child. But it isn't like either any of the adults are necessarily evil. They are destroyed people destroying somebody else. You know, and so, and which is an evil. It's a terrible, horrible thing.
Of course it is.
Anything out there? Anything else, folks? There's some good people out there who I know have ideas about this. So we would love to hear from you about what you do, how you grapple with the evil that is in the world, or when you recognize it in yourself. One of the things that I talk about a lot when I'm talking about spiritual maturity, like in the 6-step stuff, is that the more attuned we get to becoming the kind of people that we want to be, and more attuned to being in the presence of God, the more we are aware of when we fall short.
Exactly.
Right? And so it's kind of like, you know, if you've got a mixed bowl of salt and pepper, picking out any particular salt or pepper is hard. Right? But if you've got a bowl of pepper and you throw in a big chunk of salt, it's like you go, oh, look, there's the salt. And I think it's that. So in some ways, the healthier we get, the more connected with God we get, the more our own flaws just like, do this, right? So all of that said, because, you know, I am a many-worded person, what do you do when you discover evil in yourself, or when you discover that your own motivations stink, or you see, that one. Here's another one. Here's another one. The other one is, you know, what do you do when you see somebody in Target who's screaming at their kid? Right? And if you're a parent, which we are, you know that there are times when, darn it, you screamed at your kid or have wanted to. So I'm not saying there's evil in that, but it's that still, what do we do with that? How do we respond? So anybody have any thoughts, questions, ideas? Because we would love to hear from you. We do not hold all the wisdom of the world, and you probably know that, but it needs to be said. And if you haven't signed up to be on our newsletter mailing list, we really would like you to do that. So how are you dealing with the commotion in the world and the pain in the world and the ugliness of yet another mass shooting? Yet another. And Syria and North Korea and South Korea and.
I went on a little retweet rampage yesterday. I was retweeting things, but one of the things that I really liked was John Mayer kept tweeting things that I found really interesting and kind of entertaining. But one of the things that he said was about apathy. And he said, I've been, I wanna be apathetic about this, but it's not working out so well for me. Some paraphrase of that,
Right.
and that resonated with me so deep because like I want to be able to just let other people work this whole thing out, but it's like I'm to the point where I can't anymore.
Right.
So that really struck me. But I also liked his tweet about music and how something about kind-hearted people, and that we keep putting out music until the world catches up to being more kind-hearted.
Right.
Which I thought was really.
Which says what kind of music he puts out, as opposed
Right.
to, right? Because there's plenty of not kind-hearted music out there, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That idea that if you're someone who likes to fly under the radar, not that we know anybody like that, but if you're someone who likes to fly under the radar, there's times when the radar just is, shine. It's wrong metaphor, but it's right on you.
It's
and you just can't. You can't.
You can't. You just can't.
And I think we've reached one of those crisis points where it's really hard to not get engaged in the conversation, even if you wind up not doing anything.
Sure.
So any thoughts out there, folks? We would love to hear from you. You are very quiet. I feel like I should ask you a really tough question.
Everybody's just listening.
I know they're just listening because we're so fascinated. Well, then since you don't have anything for us, I'll just throw out. So Benton is working on a songwriting class for non-songwriters who lead worship.
I am. It's true.
Which is going to be so awesome.
It's going to be fun.
I'm so excited.
I'm excited about it. Yeah, it's going to be great. So if you know somebody that is in the position of leading worship, particularly in a church or in a faith tradition where hymnody is a big thing, where people are pretty entrenched in what they know as tradition and traditionally acceptable, those are some of the folks that I'm looking at reaching with this, because I think that there are lots of folks. I lead worship at a church, and I think there are a lot of folks in my position that want to know how to get from A to B, and B could be a very small step, and yet feels pretty monumental.
Sure.
So if you know anybody like that, I would love for them to connect with me. That'd be great.
Yeah, and that can happen through Benton's website or through his Facebook page or email or tap him on the shoulder, whatever. So that's really exciting, and we're trying to put that together. And then we were also talking about podcasting and some music and all kinds of stuff that we might be able to pull out, which is awesome.
Yeah. That's a question. Would you guys listen to a podcast?
Yeah, if we
started talking for like an hour, would you listen to an hour every week?
Or even from time to time, if we actually edited it before we sent it out.
It's true. It would be edited, and it would have theme music and bumper music.
Because you're writing theme music. Mm-hmm. He is writing theme music. You are writing theme music.
I sure am. It's all right here.
It's all right
here.
But is there anything you would like us to talk about or write about or teach about that would be useful to you? We always want to know that. Because we do this stuff A, because we like each other and it's fun, but B, because we want to help you in whatever way we can.
Absolutely.
So if we're talking about things or teaching about things that you have down, then please let us know where your source spots are, your questions are, because it matters to us a lot.
It does.
So
for sure. Christian Hansen says that he would listen.
You would listen. Thank you. It would be and
Melissa, you've never listened to a podcast? We're gonna turn you into such a nerd.
No, that ship is sailed.
That's true. That ship sailed. Anyway, you'll be more than just a book nerd. Now you'll be a book nerd and a podcast nerd.
That could be bad.
That could be really bad.
I've got one that you absolutely have to listen to right away, though. Like really, really soon.
Oh, so many. There's so many.
I know, it's so painful.
So many. Okay.
But do let us know. Seriously, about any courses you'd like us to do, whether you want them to do them online as a webinar or as a successive course. I've thought about doing something like putting together a daily spoken live Advent devotional. I've thought about reading Psalms just as a morning, listen to a psalm kind of thing, and just doing that on a daily basis. But if there's anything that you think might be useful to you, I know we would like to know.
Definitely would like to know that.
Because we would like to be spending most of our time doing this stuff.
Sure would.
So let us know. And again, if you haven't signed up for our newsletter, please do. And anything else that you can think of? No?
Can't think of anything else before next week.
Okay. Well, let us know if there's a topic you'd like us to confront or to mess with or to completely destroy for you, because we're happy to do that. But just mostly, I think. Oh, my nerdy coworkers are astonished I'm not a podcast listener.
It's true. It's true. We're about to break that right now for you.
See, and the basic. What was the name we came up with on UZR that time? Was it Woodsy Roads?
Woodsy Roads with B&E.
Woodsy Roads with B&E. Then we basically have to do that one. That was going to be the Travelogue podcast.
A Travelogue podcast. We'll share that story.
Yeah, another time. You might all have to have wine. So
yeah,
sign up. Really want to hear from you. Really want to know what you want us to talk about,
sure.
Or if there's a person or a writer or anything you want us to talk about, or if you just want to listen to him play music for 10 minutes, I think we can figure that out.
Yeah, we could do. Yeah,
all right.
We could figure that out.
Have a good night. Stay hopeful.
Yes.
You are the good in this world. Yes. Be the good in this world, because it's a world that really needs your good and your voice. So have a good night, folks.
Bye.
Bye.